Welcome back, guys, to the fourth episode of the Youngest Real Estate Podcast, here with JoJo. We're going to be talking about the highs and lows of real estate. So, Johanna, tell me, in terms of the highs and lows, what would you say is one of the biggest things that most real estate agents face?
Okay, so one of the lows is calling me JoJo. No, but all jokes aside, the lows, okay, I could jump into this, right? I will preface this by saying I am very emotional. So I feel those highs and lows very much. So when I feel those lows, they really hurt. When I feel those highs, man, they feel good. I mean, I have to imagine that every agent has gone through this, right? When you've made 500 calls and you can't set an appointment.
Oh yeah, it's painful. That's the painful part.
Right, and you're like, I'm working so hard, like this isn't fair, and I have to remind myself, well, honestly, life isn't fair. Like that's just how it goes. Sometimes you're gonna make 5 calls and set 5 appointments, and sometimes you're gonna make 500 and set 1, and then they're gonna call and reschedule.
It's like whenever you first join the business, you get in and you're like, oh man, I'm riding on cloud 9. I'm about to make all this money, gonna be balling. And then you get 3 months in, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm humbled.
Oh, for sure. No, it's super motivating at the beginning. It's like nothing is stopping you. Nothing. When you're starting off, it's like I'm unstoppable, right? Because you still haven't had the adversities that come with actually doing this every single day.
It's almost like a blissful ignorance. You don't know what's coming. You don't know what you don't know what you don't know, and then you get started and you're like, oh man, this is not as easy as what everybody makes it out to be. And then you kind of get hit by that brick wall where you're doing all these actions and you're coming in every single day. You're doing what you need to be doing, but you're not seeing the results. You know, and it's you just feel like you're getting kicked in the gut every single day. Like you said, you're making 500 calls a day. You're not able to set an appointment. You've got people telling you to shove it where the sun don't shine. So, I mean, that is what I would say is the most brutal lows that you can experience.
And it does come. It's easy for when you're starting off or like in the new year to say, oh man, I'm going to be like super motivated and I'm going to come into the office feeling 100 every single day. And that's going to translate. So I'm going to set that many more appointments. Like it's so easy to think that way. But when it's like a Wednesday in like the middle of March and you don't have anything going on and those checks aren't coming in and you start working out of like, then you're like shopping while you're hungry, and that's not that's not a good thing. Like you never want to go shopping while you're hungry because you're going to throw so much junk in that cart and you're going to hate yourself for it, and then your business, you start taking actions in your business that you're eating junk food. You're just calling random lead sources you would never called before, or
you end up getting commission breath. You're so hungry for the sale that people can feel it. It's like that desperation, and that you never want to be in that spot. That's that low where people can start to feel it. But I mean, it's almost like life. It's like everybody New Year's resolution. You start hitting the gym and you're like, God, where's my 6-pack? Right. And then you still don't have it, so then you end up turning to a 6-pack of beer. So,
but that's part of it. Those are the realities, and you will feel those lows in your business. I think, and I don't know. I'm too new at this to know. 2-3 years out, 5 years out, like, does that get better, or is that just going to be something that?
Well, I'll tell you. So I'm year 3 in the business, and I'll tell you, I still have lows for sure. Still have lows. I'm going through a low right now. I feel like I was telling you earlier. I feel like I'm in a rut. And so every single time I get in this mindset, I'm like, man, I'm gonna be flipping burgers at McDonald's here pretty soon. But
you want to start throwing junk food in your cart.
Exactly.
But you gotta remember the reason why you started.
It's definitely you start off it's like a we call it the emotional cycle of change. So you start off, you're feeling great, you feel like you can't lose, and then you come in, things are going great, and then you're not seeing the results that you want, so you go down in the valley. And it's you just got to keep on pushing through it. So as low as I get, as much as I feel like I'm getting kicked in the gut, right, and I can't win, I keep on going, and I know eventually I'm gonna start getting wins. It's just right now the hardest part is I have people that are saying, hey, I'm not right now, and I'm such an immediate gratification person,
right?
So,
well, and that's I think a large part of the people that are in this business is we are immediate gratification. That's why we're so good at what we do, is because we're so driven. Like, we're go, go, go. And then you're showing buyers. And this is where I get also really emotionally attached, is that I've shown them, 10 properties. We've made 2 or 3 offers. And in a market like this, they're not getting the offers accepted. And it's like they're getting their heart broken time and time again. Man, that also hurts. You're hurting for them.
Well, and it's almost 2 different balances. You're balancing your business, and then you're also balancing the buyer's emotions and the seller's emotions, for that fact. And it's so easy to kind of take both of those on, and you have to balance those highs and lows, because forget a transaction, just especially with the buyer right now in this market, being able to balance those emotions of, hey, I just lost out on a house. There's 25 offers on a house. It can be draining, and a lot of these buyers get super discouraged, and those are the super lows. So I mean, there's gosh, we can take this conversation so many different places, but I guess let's do this first. Let's go ahead and talk about business, and then I do want to talk about how to handle the clients as well with these highs and lows. In your business, whenever you go through these low periods, or you go through these lows where you're like, man, I feel like I can't win. What keeps you going?
I just have to show up again. I just have to remind myself that it does get better, and that, look, you have to celebrate the little wins. And that's what I think we're not good at. A lot of agents aren't good at, is that because you did 5 transactions last month and you're only doing 2 or 3 this month, you're like, I'm terrible. I'm doing bad. I'm gonna flunk out or whatever. Is that you have to celebrate the little wins. You have to remind yourself, like, I did amazing last year. I did great last month. This buyer, look at this love letter that this buyer wrote me, or look at how much money my seller made. Like, celebrate those little wins, and those are the things that I think I have a lot of room for improvement. But that's what keeps you going, is knowing that, yes, I'm always going to want to do more, because that's just how we're made. But it's all these little wins are what get you to the bigger prize. Absolutely.
I always tell everybody, I shoot for 1 win a day. If I can get my 1 win a day, then I know I'm going to keep my sanity and keep on going, and whether or not that 1 win is, hey, I know that to be where I want to be at, I need to make 300 calls. That's a win. If my goal is to set 2 appointments a day and I set those 2 appointments, that's a win. It's not always, you can't always gauge things in contracts and offers and things like that, because that can get real discouraging real quick. But I think I agree with you. I agree with you all the way. I think that it's definitely something that you've got to focus on the little things. I think people get so caught up in this, you're only as good as your last sale, and that mindset, while it's good, it can also be extremely difficult to overcome.
Yeah. And I know this is super cliche, but you have to remember your why. Like, why do I show up every day, even when it's like 20 degrees outside and I don't have anything going on, and I don't know where, my next contract is going to come from, and I really want to stay in bed because I can. No one is going to tell me or slap me on the hand for not coming to work. But I choose to, because I have a why, and that why is bigger than myself. And those little wins are going to get me to that why, but the why is going to be there, and when I get to that why, I'm probably going to have a bigger why, because that's how we are. But it's about the journey. It's about showing up when you don't want to show up, and remembering when you have a win, that you had that win because you decided to show up that day that you didn't want to.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, that bed felt super good this morning, but unfortunately, fortunately, I still got up. But I mean, it's you're one, you're everything you said is I think everybody can relate with. It's one of those things that it's if you've got a bigger goal in mind, you're going to keep on going. You're going to keep on pushing through, even whenever things feel like
they're falling apart.
Even whenever they feel like they're falling
you're
apart.
Useless. And
You've got to see the bigger vision. You can't stay so short-sighted that you're like, hey, I'm not getting what I want right now, so I'm going to give up. Because if you keep on pushing, that bigger vision is still going to be there.
And that's why so many agents, I think, give up, is I don't think that they defined their why before they got started. Or maybe they got started as they did where I was totally like, I just want to work hard at something. And then I started defining my why after the fact. Just work on that and really get to the real why, right? You could say it's money. You could say it's a car. You could say it's, flashy this, flashy that. But at the end of the day, that's not your why. Like, there's a deeper reason why you're doing this.
Of course. Well, and I'll tell you, I mean, it's one of those things that I think people expect, like we said, instant gratification. But people also walk in and they're like, oh, if I don't have success in 15, 20, 30 days, I'm going to quit. And I tell everybody, like, especially whenever they're joining the team, like, you need to give yourself 90 days, because there's right now things that you can be doing, and then you also have lagging indicators. So if you're doing everything that you need to be doing right now, you're going to be 90 days out from seeing that true success, really experiencing, reaping what you sowed, right? So, and I tell everybody that, like, what I'm doing right now, I'm not doing because I'm expecting results immediate. And as much as I'd love to lay down appointments, and I do love them, I'm expecting these buyers and sellers to pop off February, March, April, May. And then all of a sudden, when those times come, I'm going to be riding on cloud nine. Nobody can tell me anything.
Yep.
I'm the best agent out there in the DFW. So.
Which gets you to your highs, right?
Of course.
Okay, and the highs, what are the highs of what we do is setting the appointment or getting a call out of the blue saying, hey, come list my house.
Yes.
It's all I can lay them all out, but at the end of the day, you also have to stay very focused when you're on those highs. Whenever you're setting, whenever you're making 5 calls and setting 5 appointments from those 5 calls, and you just feel like you're on top of the world and you want to call it quits at noon, like, you have to keep going. And I might even say it's maybe a bit harder to keep going when you're on those highs than it is when you're in the lows.
Well, people experience more lows in this business than what they do highs, because they, it's almost like you're pushing a snowball on a mountain, right? You get all the way up to the mountaintop and you stop pushing, and then it pushes you all the way back down. People experience success, and then they're like, you know what, I'm going to go take a vacation.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that's not how this business works, right? You have to keep on going, even whenever you're experiencing the absolute best things that you can be doing, because that's how you maintain that level of success. So many people, they get a closing, and they're like, all right, I'm good. I'm going on vacation. I'll be back in a month.
Or there's so many people that go shopping before they even close, and then the transaction doesn't close. So now you've got a brand new car and no money. But I think, I'll argue that it might be even harder to stay concentrated and to stay focused when you're on those highs, because you've got the money and, you think that you have the time. And then 90 days out, when you haven't lead generated for 3 weeks or for a month and you've got nothing on the table, like, what do you do then? That's when it starts to get scary again.
It's those lagging indicators. It's the things that you did to get yourself to those points. If you haven't done those things, they're just going to come back and it's going to bite you in the butt. It's almost like one of those, the things that go like, all right, anyways, but you stay right down the middle. It's one of those things. And so you've almost got to find that perfect middle ground where you're like, okay, I'm never too high, I'm never too low, and I'm just able to find that middle ground where, hey, I'm doing everything I need to be doing. And I think that's where you really see your business take that next step, because instead of doing, 7, 8, 9, 10 deals a year because you're riding those highs and lows, you're doing 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 because you're even killed. That no matter what, you have a certain expectation for yourself, and if you do what you need to do, you're going to be able to reach those levels and those goals.
I think your actions shouldn't change whether you're on a high or a low.
Yes.
I think no matter, if you're closing 10 deals or if you're closing 1 deal, you need to be doing the same thing. You need to be consistent.
You need to do what got you to the dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard because, for example, right, you and I did about 50 deals last year. And I'm so tempted to say, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to change in order to do 100 next year? Or this year, sorry. And maybe I don't need to do anything differently. I need to stay consistent with the things that I've already done and do not anything different, but just add on maybe, here and there, maybe try 1 new lead gen source or do that. But I need to stay focused on the things that allowed me to do that the first year. And when I was, selling a lot or when I was on my low, I now know the things that I was not doing when I was in my lows and the things that I was doing and the things that I detracted from. So I need to stay, you need to return to, again, yes, the things that got you to that high and keep doing them even if you're experiencing the highest of, the highest high, I don't know.
Absolutely. I would totally say, I would say that you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? Like it's, we had a lot of success last year, and I think that it's easy to want to turn back and say, hey, I'm going to add this, this, and this, and then you get so overwhelmed that you're not doing the things that got you to that.
I'm going to change my entire business.
Yeah, I'm going to change my entire, I'm going to become social media based. I'm not doing any cold calling or prospecting. Yeah. I think it's so tempting because I'll tell you what, I'm like, man, I want to add social media. And then, if you consume too much time, then you're not doing the simple things that got you to where you're at, and it comes back to bite you in the butt. I know I've personally experienced that, where I get a little bit too distracted by the shiny objects at time, but no, I totally agree with you. Not to mention that there are outside factors that I think can be very, very distracting. You've got relationships, life in general can cloud your vision sometimes. But
life has to happen.
Of course.
And I mean, we're very young, so obviously we're only getting started as far as, external relationships and adulting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I had to use the word, but adulting is happening while you're trying to be a mega agent, right?
Of course.
And yes, whenever you are going through a breakup, or you're just going, or you're going through whatever it is, or you're dating someone new and everything is like, beautiful and rosy, like that is going to reflect in your business that day. And it's going to reflect in the calls that you make. It's going to reflect in the number of responses that I'm saying, the actions that you take. You're going to be more effective when you're when you're starting a relationship versus when you're breaking up with someone. Of course.
I also think that you want somebody that's going to share that same vision with you, because it also makes it abundantly difficult whenever you're trying to do everything that you need to do and that you want to do. And if you're not sharing those same goals, those same visions, then it makes it a little bit more difficult. Right.
And whether that be your partner or your family members, like whoever your circle is, because you need that circle for support. No matter what, this business and any business for that matter, I think there's so much that goes on as an entrepreneur, like internally, so much that we are just trying to balance in our heads, and we keep to ourselves, that you need that out. Yep. And so you do need those relationships. So whether it's friendships, really, like your parents, your siblings, whatever that is, you need them. And however those relationships are going, it's going, again, like you're going to see it in your business. So if you're going through difficulties in that.
Well, and I feel like it's different for everybody. Like we can just go to the basic premise. Like right before the podcast, we were talking. I personally I like to prospect all the way up until 9:00, just because my circle knows that after 9:00 I become much more available. I check out, and I'm no longer working. Whereas for you, you're like, hey, after 7, that's kind of where I check out, and that's where I start living life outside of real estate. So I think that there's differences for everybody on that aspect.
No, absolutely. You're gonna do life differently outside, but life is gonna happen.
Of course. So that brings us into a great next point, though, of like, how would you say that you balance it out with clients, right? Because clients that can, especially certain clients, can definitely be emotionally overwhelming, and can be, they're like a roller coaster,
right.
And throughout a real estate transaction, there's so many highs and there's so many lows. Getting to the closing table is definitely the highest of highs, but how do you balance that in between, from the point that you meet them, you do a buyer's rep or you do a listing agreement, all the way till you get to the closing table?
You have to remind yourself of the end goal and what our job is. And our job is to stay grounded and to stay focused on the immediate transaction, because you can't get caught up with an agent that's treating you poorly on the other side of the transaction. You can't let their emotions affect you and how you advise your client. You can't let your client that's having a bad day and then it got a report that has some issues but maybe is not too bad, want to throw everything out and just walk away and lose their $5,000 earnest. Like, you have to stay grounded, even though you also have to be able to understand and empathize with them.
I like where you're going on this, because I was having a conversation with somebody actually on Tuesday, and this is somebody that's, man, he's seen it all. He's used to be in the title business, like used to work with agents all the time, and he said something that I completely agree with. He's like, most agents don't struggle in the sense of how to write contracts, how to do things like that. They struggle with how to manage the client's emotions. How to make sure that you keep them kind of even keeled and that you help them navigate this process. Because that's essentially what our job is. The contracts are not the hardest part. It's making sure that people, are able to not, we don't want them to be making irrational decisions based off of emotion. We want them to be making logical decisions that make the most sense for them and their families, right? So, when that inspection report does come back and there's, it's 60-page report and they're freaking out and they're like, oh my gosh, right? As an agent, it's your job to navigate them and say, hey, yes, I understand that this could be extremely overwhelming, but let's pull back the curtains. What does this actually say?
Right.
And I think that's a big part.
Exactly. Like, you know what? I'm done. Let's terminate. I want to walk away from this house. I'm like, look, we are already in, like, we already have one foot in the door. Let's talk, because that's what the option period is for. Let's just talk and let's negotiate. And then, if they say no to everything and we're not doing anything for you, then you're right. Then this transaction stops making sense. But until there is an open conversation between both parties, there's still room to talk and there's still room to negotiate. That's where you have to remind your clients, both the buyer and the seller. And you have to be very grounded, because, again, you may not have the best agent on the other side working that transaction, and that can also get pretty...
Well, and there's a reason why there's just saying, calmer heads or cooler heads prevail. So, I mean, there's a reason why every single saying is there. Same thing with this, right? Cooler heads prevail, and that's why you don't want people to go rush and make irrational decisions, and that's why you want to kind of level them out, and you want to say, okay, hey, listen, I get it, you're super low, but it's the same thing as, like, let's say if there's 25 offers, you went out, you want to also keep them focused on the price, right? We want to make sure that we're still doing our inspections, doing things like that, and making sure that they're doing the process right and smart. Right,
and I truly believe that's a huge reason why we as agents still have a career. Like, that's the reason why we still have something to offer to our clients, is because if everything could be done through a computer, if I can make an offer, I can make an offer on that house, write it up, send it to the seller can respond, okay, I accept your offer, signatures, and we're good. Let's email it to title. All right, perfect. And then we get into the negotiation, and then the seller sends me a message saying, you know what, I don't agree to your repairs. Instead of your 10 grand, I'm only going to give you 2. Well, as a buyer, I'm immediately going to say, oh, this guy, how dare he? I hate him. We're done. It's over. That is why I think we are still very valuable in the transaction, why we still need to be there as the middleman between these two parties that are going to get emotional, is because technology cannot, or still has not figured out how to manage the human emotions that are involved in real estate, which is a lot. I mean, someone is purchasing maybe their first home, maybe their 10th, but they are going to live in this home for many years to come, every day. And this seller is selling something that to them was where they created memories, where they raised their children, where their
largest asset.
Exactly. So it's important that you stay grounded, because that's why we have a job.
Side note, I'm going to use an example. So I saw something where there's a property that was super hot, and part about balancing the client and managing the highs and lows is that I saw something where somebody won out on a multiple offer situation because they waived their option, their HOA, their third party financing, their everything they could have waived, they waived. And I think that there's a certain part where you don't want to let the clients make an emotionally dumb decision. And as much as you love
it's
the
your
property,
job not to.
Exactly. And as much as they love the property, I don't know if I'd ever recommend a client do that.
Now, at the end of the day, maybe that agent didn't advise them to do all of that. Maybe the agent said, you know what, this is insane. Don't do this.
Of course.
We still,
Yeah, there's definitely boundaries. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to advise.
Exactly.
But I heard that and I was like, my goodness, this actually ties in perfectly to what we're talking about.
Did this agent, and you don't know how this agent advised them. If an agent gets emotionally caught up in a transaction, they could cost their clients thousands of dollars, both on the buying and the selling side.
Well, and that's why, like, I'll be the first one to tell you, it is so, this whole thing of like all agents are equal. No, they're not. No. Because I'll tell you right now, there are definitely agents that lose their clients' money, and you don't want to be one of them.
I would say, I always argue that the barriers to entry should be higher, including for myself as well. But yes, like, if you get emotionally caught up, if you let the highs and lows of real estate or your personal life get in that transaction, you could cost your clients real money, and they may never know it, and that's also scary. But if they know it, they're never gonna let you forget it, or you're never gonna let yourself forget it.
Well, and so here's the thing, right? And I think that it's easy, and that's why it gets so important that you do have to do that, because I think that it gets easy to let your emotions start to get out of hand. And if you've lost out on 5, 6, 7, 8 different properties, then what ends up happening is, your clients start going to you, what do we need to do to win? And you go, this, and you have to be careful about that, because your clients do look to you for advice. Any client that I've ever had that were in a multiple offer, generally they're asking me, what do we need to do to win? What's the number that we need to be at? And
is this offer high enough?
Exactly. And so that's why I think it's so important that you don't get emotionally caught up, because if your client's lost out on 7 different properties and you feel drained, you can't reflect that emotion back on them. You have to stay balanced.
Yep. You can't just say, let's throw it all out the window and just give them everything they're asking for and some. You can't do that. But again, that's why sorry guys, I'm just take a breather. Again, that's why, yes, we are going to have highs and lows as real estate agents, but we can't let those highs and lows dictate our actions. As much as, they will, because life will happen, and because you are going to have difficult days, and you're going to have days when you feel like you can dominate the world. But you have to stay grounded for your clients, because that's what we're here for, is for them. And without them, we really don't have anything.
No, of course. So, I think the moral of the story is, if you keep on going, eventually the highs will come. Or, so long as you're doing what you're doing. You can't lay in bed until 1 o'clock every day and have the highs come. But the highs will come eventually. You just got to keep on doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think Brian has been really big about this lately. And we all know it. Discipline is freedom. Yeah. And if you stay disciplined, whether you feel terrible or you feel like going and buying everything at the mall, if you stay disciplined, you will reach that freedom of whatever your freedom is, whatever your why is. You'll reach it. Just stay disciplined and stick to it.
Thank you for watching another episode of the Youngest Real Estate Podcast. If you can like, share, and subscribe, and come back for another episode next week.